How many times have you already lost a man's interest just because you confessed to him exactly how you feel? If you already feel a lump in your throat right now, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you give me 5.5 hours of your time today, by the end, you will hold the strongest tool in your hands to awaken male desire and to keep it alive forever. But beware, I won't sugarcoat anything for you. The truth hurts, but it sets you free. Subscribe to this channel right now, activate the bell, because together we will expose the most destructive myths about love. And share this video with your girlfriends who desperately need to hear this. Also, write to me in the comments whether you've ever made the mistake I'm about to reveal to you. But first, a little introduction. Men don't value what they get easily. They value what they have to fight for. This is a neurobiological fact that has been deeply ingrained in the male brain over millions of years. So make sure to stay tuned, because what comes next can change your love life forever. In my 30 years as a cognitive behavioral therapist, I've seen thousands of intelligent, successful, and beautiful women destroy their relationships with just one sentence, with a confession they thought would bring them closer to their partner. But in reality, it pressed the self-destruction button of their relationship. Do you know what that sentence is? I love you more than you love me. Or even worse, I can't live without you. When a woman says that, she unconsciously gives away all her power. She admits that he has total control over her emotional well-being. And believe me, men can smell desperation from miles away. But let's look at this step by step, because the explanation behind it is scientifically fascinating. The male brain is programmed for the hunt, for conquest. When a man feels he has you completely secured, that there is nothing left to conquer, his reptilian brain interprets, mission accomplished, time for the next challenge. It's cruel, but it's reality, and denying it changes nothing about human nature. Before feminists criticize me now, let me clarify something. I am not justifying this behavior. I am explaining it. Because when you understand how something works, you can use it to your advantage. That's the difference between being a victim and being a strategist. In Colombia, where I grew up, my grandmother always said, "My son, a man who doesn't have to fight for a woman will never value her." And she was right. Many women confuse love with possession and intimacy with emotional dependence. And I'll tell you something I've never said publicly before. Years ago, I had a patient, let's call her Esperanza. She was 52, divorced, professionally very successful. She fell madly in love with a man and decided to go all in. She confessed to him that he was the most important thing in her life, that without him, she didn't know how she could go on. Do you know what happened? Within 2 weeks, he started to distance himself, not because he was cruel, but because his primitive brain interpreted, no more mystery, no more conquest. Esperanza had gone from being a challenge to being a certainty. But men don't fall in love with certainties, they fall in love with possibilities. And now comes something crucial. This doesn't mean you should become cold or manipulative. It's about preserving your dignity, your mystery, and your own life. It's about loving him without losing yourself in the process. The secret lies in neuroplasticity. Your brain can reprogram itself to act more wisely in love. But first, you need to understand why women tend to confess too much and too soon. Women are taught that expressing feelings is a virtue, that emotional honesty is the basis of a stable relationship, and that is mostly true. But everything has its right timing. If you reveal your whole heart and your emotional dependence in the early stages of a relationship, it's like laying all your cards face up on the poker table right away. Men, on the other hand, are socialized to be more emotionally reserved. That doesn't make them better or worse, just different. And once you understand these differences, you can navigate love life much more effectively. Do you see what this is really about? It's not that men are incapable of deep love. Their love just works differently. Men love what they respect, and they respect what they cannot fully possess. That is why, my dear reader, the most destructive confession you can make is to reveal your complete vulnerability and emotional dependence. In that moment, you stop being his equal partner and become his emotional burden. Let me tell you something else. Men also fear abandonment, but they express this fear differently. When a man senses that a woman clings too much to him, that she is too dependent, his emotional survival instinct kicks in, and he begins to create distance to protect himself. Do you know what the irony is? The more you chase a man with desperate love confessions, the faster he runs in the opposite direction. It's like water you're trying to hold in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Before we continue, I want you to do something for me. Go to the comments and tell me if you've ever experienced this. Have you confessed too much and suddenly noticed how everything changed? Your experience could help another woman who is going through the same thing right now. The paradoxical truth of modern love is this: to be deeply loved, you must preserve your emotional independence. To be intensely desired, you must remain a mystery worth unraveling. And to be truly valued, you must never give away all your power at once. This is not a game, this is emotional survival strategy. In Mexico, where I've given many lectures, women keep asking me, "But Mr. Rizzo, how can I love without completely surrendering myself?" And my answer is always the same. To surrender does not mean to lose yourself. You can give your heart without giving away your dignity. The difference lies in the intention behind your confession. Do you declare your love to truly create a connection, or do you do it to force his presence? Do you do it out of inner fullness or out of inner emptiness? Because here lies the core of the matter. When a woman says, "I can't live without you," she's not talking about love. She's talking about emotional dependence. And no one feels attracted to someone who needs them to survive. That's too much pressure, too much responsibility. Men are attracted to women who choose them, not to women who need them. Between these two positions lies an entire world. To choose means freedom, decision-making power, autonomy. To need means dependence, desperation, lack. And here comes the part you may not want to hear, but absolutely must understand. If you feel that you cannot live without him, then the problem is not him, it's you. An emotionally healthy woman can love passionately without losing her identity in the process. A stable sense of self-worth allows you to love out of abundance, not out of scarcity. It allows you to say, "I choose you," instead of "I need you." And believe me, men can feel this difference energetically. When I was still working in my practice in Bogota, women would often come to me and say, "Mr. Rizzo, he changed after I told him I loved him." And I would always reply, "It wasn't him who changed, it was you. You went from being the huntress to being the prey." And that is the cruel truth of love. The moment you reveal your complete vulnerability and confess that he is your everything, you shift the power balance of the relationship. And even though love should be equal, attraction follows completely different rules. Attraction thrives on uncertainty, on mystery, on challenge, not on total control or absolute security. That's why the most passionate relationships are those where there is a balance of power, where neither partner has complete control over the other. Do you remember that feeling when you first met someone you really liked? That thrilling uncertainty about whether he felt the same for you? That excitement with every message? That anticipation before each meeting? That is pure attraction. But what happens when he already knows for sure that you're crazy about him, that you'd do anything for him, that your life has no meaning without him? Then the uncertainty is gone, the mystery vanishes, the challenge is over. And unfortunately, attraction often disappears with it. Here comes something fascinating that I discovered after many years of research. This doesn't only apply to men. Women too lose interest when someone is too available, too eager for our approval. This isn't about machismo, it's simple neurology. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter for pleasure and motivation, is released most strongly when the reward is uncertain. When we know for sure that the reward is guaranteed, the brain loses interest. As simple and as cruel as that. That's why casinos are so addictive. That's why social networks captivate us so much. And that's why relationships in which there is a balance of power are more passionate and lasting than those in which one partner gives away all their power from the start. But let me make something clear. This doesn't mean you should become cold, calculating, or manipulative. It's about preserving your emotional center, your own life, your own dreams. Even when you love intensely, it's about loving maturely, not desperately. Mature love says, I love being with you, but I'm also fine without you. Desperate love says, I can't be without you. You are my everything. Do you see the difference? One stance empowers you, the other makes you a prisoner. And here comes an insight that will change your perspective. Men want to be loved, but by a woman who loves herself first, because only a woman who knows her own worth can truly recognize the worth of another person. If you don't have a stable relationship with yourself, how can you have a stable relationship with someone else? If your self-worth depends on his validation, what are you really bringing into the relationship? This is the most beautiful paradox of love. To truly love another, you must first love yourself. To be chosen, you must first choose yourself. To be valued, you must first value yourself. And when a woman enters a relationship from this inner strength, everything changes. She no longer seeks him to fill her inner voids. She no longer needs his words of love to feel complete. She is there because she decided to be there, not because she has to. That is the woman men respect. That is the woman men value. That is the woman men don't want to lose. Let's go even deeper, because I want you to understand the psychological mechanisms behind this. When a woman confesses all her love and emotional dependence, she activates in the man what psychologists call the rescuer's burden. Suddenly he feels responsible for your happiness, for your emotional well-being, for your self-worth, and that is a heavy load for anyone, because no one can be responsible for another person's happiness. That responsibility lies only with you. When you tell a man, you are my everything, you're unconsciously telling him, I am your responsibility. And most men, no matter how much they may love you, will eventually feel this burden as overwhelming. It's as if you handed him the remote control to your entire emotional world. But men, my dear, don't even want that remote control. They want to love a woman who is happy without them, who is complete in herself, because only then can they love freely without carrying the weight of being responsible for your happiness. That's why it is so important that you truly understand this principle. You are responsible for your own happiness. He can enrich it, he can intensify it, he can complement it, but he must never be the only source of it. When a woman understands this and truly lives it, she becomes irresistible. Because she radiates an energy of wholeness, of inner abundance, of emotional strength. And that energy is magnetic. In my years as a couples therapist, I have observed one thing over and over again. Women who preserve their mystery and their emotional independence are not only more desirable, but also have longer and more fulfilling relationships. Why? Because they keep their own lives, their own interests, their own circle of friends. They remain interesting to their partner. They have new things to share, their own experiences to tell, their own perspectives to bring in. But if you give everything away and turn yourself into his shadow, if your whole world revolves only around him, You become predictable, transparent, boring. And boredom is the silent killer of every relationship. Men fall in love with women who surprise them, who challenge them intellectually and emotionally, who make them grow. They don't fall in love with women who worship them and have given up their own identity for them. And here is another important insight. When a woman preserves her emotional independence, she also keeps her sexual magnetism. Because sexuality is closely tied to personal autonomy. A woman who is complete within herself, who has her own dreams and ambitions, who doesn't constantly need her partner's validation, radiates an enormously powerful sexual energy. It's the energy of someone who consciously chooses to be there, not of someone who has to be there. And men interpret this autonomy in their primitive brain as genetic strength, as a valuable female worth conquering again and again. That's why, my dear reader, the secret is not in never confessing your love, but in never confessing your emotional dependence. And you can tell him that you love him, but never tell him that you cannot live without him. You can show him your affection, but never your desperation. The difference is subtle, but crucial. I love you comes from the heart. I can't live without you comes from the fear of abandonment. And now I want to share something personal that helped me truly understand this subject. Years ago, I was in a relationship where my partner was emotionally extremely dependent on me. She kept telling me that I was the most important thing in her life, that without me she wouldn't know what to do, that her entire happiness depended on me. At first I felt flattered, even powerful, but over time I began to feel the pressure as suffocating. I felt like I couldn't even be myself anymore because every tiny change in my mood would deeply affect her. I couldn't even have my own difficult moments because her well-being depended on me. This experience taught me firsthand what it means to carry the emotional burden, to be everything for someone. And I assure you, that is not romantic. It is exhausting. Men need space to breathe, space to be imperfect, to go through their own inner processes without feeling that their partner's happiness depends on it. They need to know that if they have a bad day or need time for themselves, they won't emotionally shatter the woman they love. And that is why an emotionally independent woman is so attractive. She allows a man to be human, imperfect, vulnerable, without the pressure of constantly being the emotional support system for someone else. And now comes something that may sound counterintuitive, but is absolutely true. The moment you stop desperately needing his love is exactly the moment when you receive the most love. The moment you stop emotionally chasing him is the moment when he starts chasing you. That is the law of attraction in its purest form. What you cling to tightly slips away. What you embrace transforms. But be careful. This is not a game of manipulation. It's not about pretending indifference while you're breaking inside. It's about developing real emotional independence, that inner abundance that allows you to love from strength and not from lack. And to achieve that, you must work on your self-worth, on your relationship with yourself. You need a rich, fulfilling life that doesn't depend on any man, your own dreams, your own goals, your own circle of friends, your own sources of joy. If you have all that, if your life is fulfilling on its own, then you can love without clinging. You can surrender without losing yourself. You can commit without disappearing. And that is exactly the kind of woman no wise man will ever want to lose. Now, I want to talk about the cognitive distortions that lead us to confess too much in relationships. One of the most powerful is confirmation bias. When we're in love, we tend to interpret every positive signal as confirmation that he feels the same. And that is exactly what gives us the courage to confess our deepest feelings. But here lies the problem. Men can be tender, attentive and romantic without being ready for a deep emotional commitment. If we misinterpret these signals and confess our total love, we put him under pressure to go into an emotional depth he may not be ready for. Men generally process feelings more slowly than women. While we may move from attraction to love within a few weeks, they often need months to reach the same point. If we confess our deepest feelings before he has reached that point on his own, we create pressure and overwhelm, and that can make him withdraw. That's why it's so important to respect different emotional timelines. It's not about being calculating, but about being emotionally wise and respecting the natural process of how men fall in love. And here is another crucial concept: gradual emotional reciprocity. Instead of confessing everything at once, it is far more effective to reveal your feelings gradually, in proportion to how much he reveals his. If he tells you that he really likes you, you can say that you really like him too. If he says that he's starting to feel something special for you, you can say you feel the same. But if he says, "I like you," and you respond with, "I'm crazy about you, you're the love of my life," you destroy that emotional reciprocity. This imbalance creates discomfort and can make him feel that the relationship is moving too fast, or that there's an emotional gap that puts him in an uncomfortable position. Men value emotional symmetry. They want to feel that they are on the same emotional level as their partner, not that they're several steps behind and forced to catch up. And now to something many women don't understand. Men are just as afraid of rejection and vulnerability, but they express that fear differently. While women often express their fear by seeking emotional security and declarations of love, men tend to protect themselves through distance or emotional walls. When a man realizes that a woman is more emotionally invested than he is, his self-protection instinct kicks in. He thinks, if she's so in love with me and I'm not yet sure of my feelings, I could really hurt her. Better to keep some distance until I'm clear. Ironically then, the very confession you make in order to create more closeness often produces the opposite, more distance. That's why it's essential to develop emotional patience. Feelings must be allowed to grow naturally, without pressure, without rushing, without trying to control the other person's timing. And here comes a truth that hurts, but that you absolutely need to hear. If you have to confess to a man how much you love him just so that he values you, then he's not the right man for you. The right man will value you for who you are, not for how much you need him. He will fall in love with your strength, not with your weakness. He will choose you because he admires you, not because you worship him. And when you find this man, you won't feel the desperate need to declare all your love to him. You will feel secure in the relationship, appreciated for who you are, loved, without ever having to beg for that love. Because here lies the deepest truth about love. True love is not begged for, it is earned. It is not chased, it is attracted. It is not demanded, it is inspired. And a woman who understands this and lives by this principle will be irresistible to men of quality, because she radiates the energy of someone who knows her worth, who is not desperately searching for love, and who is ready to give herself only to the one who deserves it. Let us imagine together what a woman looks like who has developed this healthy emotional independence. She is not a cold or distant woman, but warm-hearted and at the same time self-assured. She is loving but not needy. She shows affection but not desperation. This woman has her own interests, her own friendships, her own career or projects she passionately pursues. When she is with her partner, she enjoys his company to the fullest. But when she is alone, she enjoys herself just as much and feels complete. She doesn't constantly check her phone to see if he has written, She doesn't cancel her plans just to be available for him at all times. She doesn't sacrifice her dreams for the relationship. She doesn't lose her identity in the process of loving. And paradoxically, this exact type of woman is the one who awakens the greatest passion and strongest desire in men. Because she remains a mystery worth unraveling. She remains a challenge worth mastering. She is a woman who enriches a man's life instead of becoming an emotional burden. Men fall in love with women who enrich their lives, not with women who depend on them just to exist. And now, my dear reader, I want you to do an exercise in honesty with yourself. Think back to your last important relationship. Did you confess too much too soon? Did you reveal all your vulnerability in the hope of creating more intimacy? Did you lose yourself in the process of loving? If the answer is yes, don't condemn yourself. Most of us women have gone through this phase because we were never taught to love wisely. We were taught that love means total surrender, absolute sacrifice, the loss of our own identity in favor of the couple's identity. But mature love is something else. Mature love means two complete people who choose to share their lives, not two halves desperately trying to complete each other. Mature love says, I am happy with myself and with you I am even happier. Immature love says, I am only happy with you, without you I am nothing. Do you see the difference? One attitude comes from abundance, the other from lack. One attracts, the other repels. To develop this mature love, you must first work on your relationship with yourself. You must learn to be alone without feeling lonely. You must build your own life, your passions, your strong and independent identity. Only when you are happy with yourself can you love without clinging. Only when you feel complete can you complement another person's life without being dependent on them. And yes, that requires inner work. Sometimes it requires therapy, a lot of self-awareness, the development of emotional intelligence, and a healthy sense of self-worth. But every minute is worth it, because if you achieve this, you will not only attract better relationships, but also lead a more fulfilling and satisfying life in every area. Now, I want to tell you the signs that you are confusing love with emotional dependence, because it is crucial to be able to distinguish the two if you want to love in a healthy way. You can recognize emotional dependence by the compulsive need to always be with the other person, by the fear when you are apart, by the feeling that your life has no meaning without him. You recognize it when you lose your own identity, cancel plans, and sacrifice relationships just to be available. Healthy love, on the other hand, can be recognized by the fact that you enjoy being with the other person, but not out of desperate compulsion. You feel good when you are together, and you also feel good when you are apart. You keep your identity, your friendships, your interests. In emotional dependence, there is desperation. In healthy love, there is conscious choice. In emotional dependence, there is fear of abandonment. In healthy love, there is trust in your own worth. In emotional dependence, there is the need for control and constant reassurance. In healthy love, there is the ability to flow with the natural uncertainty of relationships. And here comes something crucial. When you are in the mode of emotional dependence, every confession you make is colored by that desperation. Men sense that energy of lack, that vibration of neediness. That is why it is so important that before you confess anything, you ask yourself, am I loving out of abundance or out of scarcity? Here comes a concept I especially like: emotional self-dependence. It means that you, yourself, are the main source of your well-being, your self-worth, your happiness. That you know, no matter what happens in a relationship, I will be okay, because I have a stable relationship with myself. When you develop emotional self-dependence, you can love deeply without clinging desperately. You can commit without losing yourself. You can be vulnerable without becoming dependent. And this emotional self-dependence is reflected in your language, in your behavior, in the energy you radiate. You no longer say, "I can't live without you," but "I love living with you." You no longer say, "You are my everything," but "You are a very important part of my life." Small changes in language that reflect big changes in your inner attitude. And now I want to tell you about the so-called mirror effect in relationships. When you have a healthy relationship with yourself, when you value and respect yourself, you automatically attract people who also value and respect you. It is impossible for someone to treat you better than you treat yourself. It is impossible for someone to appreciate you more than you appreciate yourself. That is why working on your self-worth and emotional independence is not only important to attract better relationships into your life, but also to deserve them. Because here comes an uncomfortable truth. If you have low self-esteem, if you don't value yourself, you will attract men who confirm exactly that. Men who treat you badly, who don't respect you, who play with your feelings. Why? Because unconsciously you seek relationships that reflect your inner belief. If you believe that you don't deserve love, you will seek men who don't really love you. If you believe that you must beg for love, you will find men who make you do exactly that. That is why it is so crucial that before you seek the love of others, you build real self-worth. Before you expect others to value you, you must make sure that you value yourself. When you do this inner work, when you develop strong self-esteem and healthy emotional independence, you no longer feel the compulsive need to confess to a man how much you need him, because you don't need him to be happy. You choose him because he enriches your life, not because he fills your inner voids. That is the difference between love out of abundance and love out of scarcity. And believe me, men feel this difference energetically. In all my years of counseling, I have observed a pattern. Women often confess too early because they want to accelerate the emotional intimacy of the relationship. They believe that if they reveal their deepest feelings, he will also open up, and the desired deep connection will be created. But intimacy cannot be forced. It develops naturally over time, with trust, with shared experiences. If you try to accelerate this process with premature confessions, you often achieve the opposite. Instead of closeness, you create pressure and discomfort. Men need time to process their feelings and build trust. If they feel pushed too early into emotional depth they are not ready for, they respond with distance. That's why it is so important to respect the natural rhythms of emotional development in a relationship. Intimacy grows layer by layer, experience by experience. And here is a very powerful strategy. Instead of constantly confessing to him verbally how much you love him, show it through consistent actions. Men are, emotionally speaking, more visually oriented than auditory. They process love better when they can see and feel it, not just when they hear it. Be loving without being clingy. Be attentive without being overwhelming. Be warm without seeming desperate. Show your love through small, everyday gestures, through genuine presence, through support in difficult moments, but always from a place of inner strength, not from neediness. The difference lies in the intention behind your actions. Do you do it because you truly want to express love? Or do you do it because you want to secure his feelings for you? Men intuitively sense this difference. They can distinguish between a woman who loves from abundance and a woman who clings from lack. And now, my dear reader, I want to reveal to you the most powerful secret to keeping a man's interest long-term, your constant personal growth. Men get bored with women who become predictable, who they completely know, who have stopped growing and developing. But they remain fascinated by women who remain a mystery, who surprise, who continuously evolve. And if you have your own projects, if you are constantly learning new things, If you are gaining your own experiences, you stay interesting, you keep bringing new topics into conversations, fresh perspectives into the relationship. But if you give everything away from the start, if your whole world revolves only around him, if you abandon your individual growth, you become transparent, predictable, and unfortunately, sometimes boring. Men want to grow with a partner, not carry the emotional burden of a woman who has stopped evolving. They are looking for a companion on equal footing, not someone emotionally dependent. That is why it is so important to preserve your own dreams, your own goals, and your personal development, not just for the relationship, but above all for yourself. Because you deserve a rich, fulfilling life, independent of any man. When you live from this mindset, when your life is already fulfilling and rich on its own, then every man who enters your life will be a beautiful addition and not a desperate necessity. That is the difference between being the protagonist of your own life and being a supporting character in someone else's. And believe me, men are far more attracted to protagonists than to extras. Now, I want to explain something else that many women don't understand. Men's fear of commitment is not a fear of love. It is a fear of losing freedom and individuality. When a man senses that a woman wants to completely merge with him, that he should be her everything and she his everything, his survival instinct kicks in. He thinks, if I fully give myself to her, what will happen to my own dreams, my friends, my identity? That's why independent women are so attractive. They show that it's possible to love deeply without giving up your identity, that you can commit without losing your freedom. An independent woman says to a man, you can love me without losing yourself. You can commit to me and still remain yourself. You can be in a relationship with me and still pursue your own dreams. That is a much more attractive message than love me and I will be your everything, and you will be my everything and will need nothing else in life. Men want to complement your life, not be your entire life. They want to be important to you, but not the sole source of your happiness. And here, my love, comes something crucial. When a man feels that he could lose you, that is precisely the moment when he values you the most. Not because he is cruel or manipulative, but because that is how human psychology works. We always value more what we could lose than what is guaranteed. That is pure emotional economics. And when you show him that you don't desperately need him, that you would be fine without him if it came to it, then he understands that he has to make an effort to keep you in his life. This doesn't mean you should threaten him with breaking up or play emotional games. It means that you preserve your worth, your dignity, and your own life, that you make it clear to him, I choose you, but if you don't choose me with the same intensity, I will still be fine. That is the true position of strength in any relationship. Knowing that you can be happy on your own, regardless of what happens with this particular person. And when a man feels that you are with him because you want to be, not because you have to be, then he values you in a completely different way. He respects you more, desires you more, invests more effort into you because he knows a woman who values herself, who has options, is a treasure not easily found. And let me tell you something personal that helped me deeply understand this principle. In one of my past relationships, my partner constantly told me that I was the most important thing in her life, that she didn't know how she could live without me, that her entire happiness depended on me. At first, I felt loved, appreciated, important, but over time I felt enormous pressure. I felt like I couldn't have my own difficult moments, my own processes, my own needs, because her well-being depended completely on me. And paradoxically, That very total emotional dependence created a feeling of suffocation in me. I wanted space, time for myself, emotional freedom. That experience taught me why emotional independence is so attractive. Because when someone loves you without desperately needing you, they give you the space to be human, imperfect, with your own processes, without the pressure of always having to be another person's emotional pillar. And paradoxically, that very freedom awakens even more desire to be with that person, not less. Therefore, my dear reader, when you develop your emotional independence, you not only become more attractive, you also allow your partner to love you more freely and honestly. Now, I want to draw your attention to something I call the trap of constant availability. Many women think they are showing love by always being available, cancelling their plans, answering every message immediately, dropping everything for him. But total availability produces the exact opposite. It devalues your time and in turn devalues you. When something is always available, it loses its value. Men appreciate women who have their own priorities, their own schedule, their own life, not because they should be hard to get, but because it shows that they respect themselves. When you maintain your own commitments, your own activities, your own circle of friends, you show him, I am a valuable woman with a rich, fulfilling life. And that is far more attractive than always being available and waiting for him. It also makes the moments you share much more valuable. They become something special, something to look forward to. But if he knows you are always, immediately, and unconditionally there, that anticipation disappears. That's why it is so important to keep your own life, your own time, your own activities, not out of calculation, but out of self-respect and emotional health. And here's an important point. Saying no is not just healthy, it is necessary. If he invites you and you already have plans, don't cancel them right away. If he writes to you and you are busy, you don't have to respond immediately. If you need time for yourself, take it, without guilt. These small no's show that you have healthy boundaries, that you respect yourself, that you are not desperate for his attention. And paradoxically, these very boundaries create more respect, and also more desire. Men respect women who respect themselves. It really is that simple. Now let me explain the difference between healthy vulnerability and emotional dependence. Many women confuse the two, and that is exactly why they confess things they shouldn't. Healthy vulnerability means sharing your fears, your dreams, your experiences, your deepest thoughts. Opening yourself emotionally from a position of inner strength because you know you can handle any reaction. Emotional dependence, on the other hand, means confessing to him that he is responsible for your happiness, that you cannot be okay without him, that you need his constant validation to feel valuable. Vulnerability creates real intimacy. Dependence creates pressure and suffocation. When you show healthy vulnerability, you are saying, I trust you with something important about me, because I trust you and I want you to know me more deeply. When you show dependence, you are saying, I need you in order to feel complete. Do you see the difference? One comes from emotional strength, the other from inner lack. Men feel honored when a strong woman shares her vulnerability with them, but they feel crushed when a woman places the responsibility for her well-being on them. That's why, before you share something very intimate, you should always ask yourself, am I doing this to create a genuine connection? Or am I doing this because I need his validation? If it's the latter, it's better to wait until you've strengthened your own inner security. And now, my dear reader, I want to tell you about the most powerful confession you can make. One that few women dare to make. Telling him that you are happy even without him. Confessing that you are happy even without him is the strongest statement you can make, because it breaks all the patterns of emotional dependence that destroy relationships. A man who hears this immediately understands that you are not with him out of fear of loneliness, not because you need him as a crutch, but because you freely and from your abundance choose him. And this very freedom, this emotional autonomy, awakens deep respect and true desire. Because when a man knows that you are complete without him, he will do everything he can to remain a part of your life. And therefore, my dear reader, the next time you feel the temptation to confess your dependence, stop and remember, true love does not come from neediness, but from conscious choice. Work on yourself, strengthen your self-worth, build a rich and fulfilling life, and then love deeply without losing yourself in the process. That is the key to attracting and keeping a man of quality, and even more importantly, to living a healthy, free, and fulfilling love life.